On July 28th, a car with nobody's hands on the wheel pulled onto a residential street in Brent, northwest London. It cost $27,600 to build. Waymo's equivalent costs over $100,000. That car is the Apollo RT6, built by Baidu. It has already carried 22 million passengers across 27 cities on 4 continents. But here's what almost nobody reported that week. This story isn't actually about the car. The RT6 is the visible part. What made it possible is buried in the supply chain underneath it. Something the Pentagon has been trying to shut down since 2024, and something America's own answer to it filed for bankruptcy over in December. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why a $27,000 Chinese robotaxi driving through London is the least important fact in this entire story. The numbers are real, the filings are public, and what they add up to is genuinely hard to believe. Let's start with the price. Every robotaxi company on Earth has been stuck on the same problem, and it has almost nothing to do with software. It's arithmetic. To run a driverless fleet, you have to build the cars. Waymo's approach was to take a Jaguar I-Pace, a luxury electric SUV, and load it with LiDAR, radar, cameras, redundant steering, and enough onboard computing to run a small data center. Industry estimates put the finished vehicle north of $100,000 each. Multiply that across a fleet, and the number stops being a business and starts being a science experiment. In early 2025, Goldman Sachs modeled the industry's path forward. Their projection was that autonomous vehicle costs would fall from roughly $120,000 down to $50,000 by 2030. That was the optimistic case. That was the target the entire Western industry was working toward. Baidu hit 28,000 in 2024, 6 years early. The vehicle is the Apollo RT6, Baidu's 6th-generation robotaxi, built with jangling motors, the same Chinese manufacturer that builds vehicles with Ford. It's a cross between an SUV and a minivan, with a detachable steering wheel and a top speed of 84 miles an hour. And as of April 2026, Baidu had driven the build cost down to roughly 200,000 yuan, about $27,600. The generation before it cost 480,000 yuan. They cut it by more than half in a single product cycle. Think about what that does to the map. For the price of one Waymo, Baidu puts 4 RT6S on the street. 4 times the coverage, 4 times the miles, 4 times the data flowing back every single day. But the price tag is only the symptom. Because to understand how a fully driverless Level 4 vehicle got cheaper than a Toyota Camry, you have to look at what's bolted to the roof. And that's a story nobody in Washington wanted. But cheap only matters if the thing actually works. And for years, the comfortable Western assumption was that Chinese robotaxis were theater. A few cars, a closed district, a government subsidy, a press release. Here is the documented record. As of April 2026, Apollo Go had completed more than 22 million passenger rides. In the first 3 months of 2026 alone, it ran 3.2 million fully driverless trips, up more than 120% year over year. By May, the fleet had covered over 330 million kilometers of autonomous driving, more than 220 million of those with nobody in the driver's seat at all. 220 million kilometers is enough to drive to the moon and back nearly 300 times. And the safety record attached to it is the part that should stop you. Baidu reports that across all that fully driverless mileage, an airbag deploys on average once every 12 million kilometers. 12 million kilometers is roughly 300 laps around the Earth's equator between incidents severe enough to trigger a bag. Then in July, it went somewhere nobody was expecting. On the 23rd, Hong Kong's Transport Department granted Apollo Go the territory's first fully driverless trial permit. Testing began 4 days later on Airport Island, the first fully driverless trial in any right-hand drive market anywhere on Earth. 5 days after that, the RT6S were on London roads. 27 cities: Beijing, Wuhan, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Seoul, Zurich, Brent. And this is the part I've been building toward. Because none of that scale, none of that mileage, none of that price collapse was actually engineered by Baidu. Baidu is the customer. The thing that made it possible is built by somebody else entirely. And America already tried to ban it. Which brings us to the roof. Every one of these vehicles sees the world through LiDAR. A LiDAR unit fires laser pulses millions of times per second and measures how long each one takes to return, assembling a live, 3-dimensional map of everything around the car down to the centimeter. Cameras guess at depth. LiDAR measures it. It is the single most important sensor on a driverless vehicle, and for most of the last decade, it was also the most expensive component on the entire car. When Waymo started, a single LiDAR unit cost $75,000. One sensor, worth more than the vehicle it was mounted on. Today, Chinese suppliers sell solid-state LiDAR units for under $200. That is not a discount. That is a collapse. Hesai, the Shanghai manufacturer at the center of it, states it has driven LiDAR costs down by 99.5% in 8 years. It shipped over 1 million units in 2025. In January, it announced it was doubling capacity again, from 2 million units a year to 4 million. And here's the number that reframes everything. According to Yole Group's automotive research for 2026, Chinese companies now account for approximately 95% of the global automotive LiDAR market. Not the Chinese market, the global one. Washington saw this coming. In January 2024, the Pentagon added Hesai to its 1260H list of Chinese military companies. Hesai sued. It was removed, then relisted in 2025. The House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party introduced legislation to bar the Department of Transportation from spending a single federal dollar on Chinese LiDAR. And then, in December 2025, Luminar Technologies, the flagship American LiDAR company, the one Volvo had built its entire autonomous platform around, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the Southern District of Texas, carrying roughly $506 million in debt. In January, its LiDAR business sold at auction, $33 million. So here's what actually happened. America didn't lose a Robotaxi race. As of March 2026, Waymo was still running 500,000 paid trips a week across 10 American cities, more than Apollo Go, from a fleet of over 3,500 vehicles. On that scoreboard, America is ahead. But the scoreboard is measuring the wrong thing. Underneath every robotaxi, every warehouse robot, every autonomous forklift, every delivery vehicle, every machine that has to look at the physical world and understand what it's looking at, there is a sensor. And that sensor is now almost entirely Chinese. That is why the RT6 costs $27,000. That is why Baidu can put 4 cars on a street for the price of one American competitor. It isn't a smarter algorithm. It's a supply chain that Washington moved to ban, and then watched its own alternative go bankrupt before the ban could take effect. The car in Brent isn't the story. The car is the receipt. China didn't win the race to build the brain. It quietly bought up the eyes.